is the beginning of September, so it is time to go over all the books that I read in August, and I am so happy with how much I got read. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be going over all the books I read in August. I do want to preface that if I sound congested, the last full week of August I had COVID and I've spent a week laying around being basically a potato because I haven't really felt that good. So I didn't get a whole lot of reading done the last week of August, and I'm pretty sad about that because it was the last week of Battleathon. But what can you do? Right? But before we get into today's video, please always make sure that you like and subscribe. Check my description box for all of my links to my Patreon, Pango Books account, my socials, and my Bookish Box ambassador link where you can get 10% off your entire order with their shop. I can already tell you that this is going to be a very difficult video to edit because I am sniffling, I'm having to stop, so just bear with me if you notice that there's quite a bit of edits and everything because I am just struggling. So I started off August reading The Ritual by Chantal Tessier. This is book 1 in the Lords series. You are following a different guy every single book, but basically they're at this college where the first 3 years they do this thing called the initiation, where every single year they have to basically deal out contracts that the lords have given them, and if they don't do them then they don't pass initiation. Whenever they get to their senior year, basically they have passed, they are part of the lords, and they get what's called a chosen, a girl that they basically can do whatever they want with. However, our main guy in the first book, he really doesn't want to do whatever he wants to the girl. He actually ends up forming this bond with her, finds out that there is a lot more to why he was chosen to have her, and the story kind of goes from there. It's a very dark romance, one that you definitely need to check trigger warnings for because there is quite a lot that goes on in these books. But I really enjoyed it. I loved watching their relationship blossom. I really enjoyed learning about the mystery and everything that's going along with it. There is a mystery element to the whole story where you are trying to find out what her past is, why they are crossing paths together. It is really good. I loved watching everything kind of develop in the story and learning more about the lords and what they stand for, and it was really good altogether. The thing that I didn't like was the third act breakup because I felt like it really kind of came out of nowhere. Not necessarily that it was not needed. I feel like at the point in the book that we were at when the third act breakup happened, there shouldn't have been this whole mistrust thing. There shouldn't have been this whole, oh, well, he's been lying to me this whole time because he's built up the trust with her. I don't know. I just felt like it really wasn't that great. I ended up giving this book 4 stars and I wanted to continue on with this series. The next book that I ended up reading was Lady of Darkness by Melissa K. Rorick. This was our Patreon book club pick for August and I enjoyed this book thoroughly. I ended up giving it 5 stars. You are following our girl who was basically raised up to be Death's maiden, I believe, where she is an assassin. She slinks in the shadows. She is one of the most powerful people in this order, and she ends up having kind of a relationship with the crowned prince. And you can tell that she likes him, but she's also using him and things. Like, their chemistry wasn't there. But then she ends up dealing with the general of his armies, Soren, who is not who he appears to be. They start growing closer. She can't stay away from him, and the story kind of goes from there. There is this mystery plot on who is trying to kill the children, who is trying to basically get to Scarlet, our main character, and why she is a pivotal role into everything. Please check trigger warnings because this is dark. It deals with SA. fae. It deals with a lot of dark themes. So make sure that you check that out before you go in. I personally loved this because it was a new take on assassins. It was a new take on a different fae romance, and it was extremely different but so good. It had me so invested that I couldn't wait to pick up the second book. And the revelations you find out, the plot twists that happened towards the end of the book, I was just floored at what was going on. So definitely pick up Lady of Darkness if you really like your dark fantasy romance. I then ended up picking up the second book in the Lord series, which is called The Sitter. This story goes along at the same time that book 1 was going on, but you are following Sin, who is the next guy in this series. He carries out his initiation, but the girl that he wants, he has been basically kind of messing around with for the past couple years, and whenever it comes down to his chosen, he doesn't want his chosen, he wants this girl. It is extremely graphic. It is very erotic, so this book definitely took the eroticism and leveled it up 5 times. So if that is not something that you like, I wouldn't suggest going into this series. I ended up giving this one 4 stars as well. I do want to continue on with the Lord series, but at this point I was like, you know, I have been dabbling into a lot of dark themes lately. I need to kind of get away from that because there's only so much dark that I can take. But definitely check trigger warnings for this one as well. There is a scenario with a gun. If you know, you know. There is a lot of mystery as well, trying to find out how this girl plays into the whole Lord's plot. And I was shocked at the finale of this book because the revelation that happens, the plot twist that happens, I did not expect for it to happen. You kind of get little breadcrumbs throughout this book, but it was really kind of out of nowhere. But you also see our characters from the first book kind of come into play because, like I said, the timeline is going on at the same time. And it looks like that our author, Chantal Tessier, is really setting it up to where she can do a second generation, which I'm all for. If she ends up not doing a second generation, I'm okay with that, but she is leaving it open to where she can do that, and I'm all here for that. The next one I ended up finishing was the bind up of 4 little short stories, and that is Modern Fairy Tales by Holly Black. You have Tithe, Valiant, Ironside, and then also The Lament of Ludi Lu, all bound up into this one book. I have mixed feelings. I gave the whole book a 3-star altogether. The stories are part of fairy. You do end up going to the kingdom of Elfheim, and you do meet Cardan, and you meet a couple of the cast of characters that later on are in The Cruel Prince. But basically in these 3 stories, you are following our main girl, Kay, who doesn't live a very good life. She always says that she talked to fairies whenever she was younger, and everyone calls them her invisible friends. Lo and behold, they are real. They do come back into play when she is older, and she gets wrapped up in the dark, unseelie court and the court of teeth or termites, I believe. It is wonderful. And then you go into Valiant, where you start following our other girl, Valerie, and she lives in the city of New York, where she ends up befriending some homeless people and gets wrapped up into what they are doing, and then ends up meeting a fairy herself. And then whenever you get to Ironside, it kind of like all comes together. I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed The Lament of Ludi Lu as well, because that is where it ties in with The Cruel Prince, and you meet Cardan, and you meet, you know, all of these characters. I enjoyed this. I gave it a 3-star. I wouldn't say that these were the best short stories. I could definitely tell they are from very early 2000s, and it made me want to continue on and reread The Cruel Prince. So I guess it did its job. But 3 stars, I enjoyed it. If you really like The Cruel Prince and you like to be back in that world, but you want to know kind of what happened before The Cruel Prince, definitely pick up this little short story collection. I honestly think that you would love it, especially if you already love The Cruel Prince itself. The next 3 books I'm going to talk about together because they are part of their own story, which is The Dark One, Their Vicious Darling, and also The Fae Princes, all by Nikki St. Crow. These are the last 3 books in the Vicious Lost Boys series, I believe, which the first one is called The Never King. And you are following our girl who is like a darling who basically gets kidnapped whenever she is 18. And that is just what has happened generation after generation. She always thought that her mom was a little crazy and that her mom was making this up. And so she thought that she was going to spiral into basically like a schizophrenic state whenever she turned 18. Come to find out, Peter Pan comes to collect her and her mom was telling her the truth. She's whisked off to Neverland where she meets the Lost Boys. You also have Hook and Croc and every cast of character that's there. Basically, the darlings know where Pan's shadow is, so he is trying to, every generation, find out where the shadow was hidden, and it goes from there. This is very spicy. This is a why choose romance. So if you are not into that, definitely don't go in here. Definitely check trigger warnings, but I really loved the whole aspect. It took me a minute in The Never King to really get into the story, but then whenever you start diving into the other books, they're quite short. They're less than like 260 pages each, and I really started liking the characters, some of them more than others, but I really liked the mystery aspect on who was behind Pan's shadow going missing. How are we going to get that? How does that play into this bigger role? And now there's a spin-off series, and I think it might be a duology, but we'll get into that in just a moment. So after I finished those books up, that wraps up Winnie and Pan and the Lost Boys story. There is another series that is coming out. The first one is called The Devourer of Men by Nikki St. Crow. This is following Hook, Croc, and Wendy Darling. Listen, you find out why that's so significant at the end of the series of the Vicious Lost Boys. But I wanted to continue on. I wanted to know Hook's story. I wanted to know more about Croc. I wanted to know more about that. And it is kind of like their romance. They're going on a quest to find Wendy. They're going on a quest to find out how she plays into a bigger role. I loved it. I definitely see that it's extremely spicy. It is a male-male-female relationship, and it's like a polyamorous one, and it's so good. I cannot wait for the next book to come out in this series because I want to know more about Hook and Croc. Their romance is just so amazing. I love that they aren't insta-lovey, but you can definitely tell that they have chemistry. So can't wait for the next book for Hook and Croc. Then I ended up picking up Wicked Saints by Emily A. Duncan. I was so excited to go into this story because it was pitched as a gothic fantasy with some romance in there, and I was really disappointed. I only gave it 2 stars. I couldn't even tell you most of what this book is about because I feel like whenever I was reading it, I just checked out. Like maybe 40% of the way through the book, I was like, I'm just not getting it. But I wanted to continue going because I was like, maybe I'll end up liking it. Maybe I will want to continue on with the next book. I don't think I will be because this book, even though I do think that there's going to be a lot of people that will love this and there is a target audience for it, I am not the target audience. I was not gripped by the story. I don't feel like there was gothic elements that really made me want to be in this world. I didn't get that ambiance feeling that I was hoping for. So sadly, 2 stars. I'm definitely not going to be continuing on, but I think, like I said, there is a target audience for this, and that may be you. The next one I read was Play Along by T.L. Swan. I really enjoyed this book. It was part of our in-person book club pick for August. I gave this book 4 stars. My cousin has been desperate for people to read it, and of course this month her pick was up, so she picked it. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I felt like the plot twist that happened really came as a shock for me. I didn't expect the way that the story went, but basically our girl is kind of on the run. She doesn't stay in one place for very long. Her mother was ruthlessly killed by her father 5 years prior to this starting. She ends up seeing her boyfriend and her roommate kind of having this relationship. She felt betrayed. She ends up going into the alley and entwined with these really bad guys that end up kidnapping her. And it was kind of on purpose. You don't know why though. You don't understand what is going on. The action was there. The romance was there. I absolutely loved every aspect of this book. So if you want a romantic suspense that will have your jaw on the floor, definitely pick this book up. Check trigger warnings before you go into it, but it was by far one of the best books I've read so far this year. I ended up picking up For She Is Wrath by Emily Varga. I had an arc of this, and I know that it's coming out in one of the book boxes that I get. I want to say maybe Fairy Loot possibly, or Bookish Box, one of the two. I ended up having an arc of this, and I ended up reading it. I'm going to tell you guys right now, it was kind of a flop for me. I ended up giving it 2 stars. I think that I've really outgrown the whole YA fantasy aspect of all the books that I have. So if you want to pick this up, definitely know that it has a great fantastical plot and it does follow certain mythologies. So if you like that in your YA fantasy, definitely pick it up. But this one, I really just wasn't even connected to the story. I wasn't connected to our female main character. I wasn't connected to a whole lot of things. And I can't really give a whole lot of away because then it would give away the plot and what the story is kind of alluding to whenever you go into it. But it just missed the mark for me. I then picked up my arc of Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wang. This is a standalone book and it was good. I gave it 3 stars. I think M.L. Wang writing is wonderful. I like the fact that you're not having to read like a 10-book series to finally end this epic fantasy. However, I wasn't very invested. I don't know if I just wasn't into an epic fantasy setting. I don't know if I really didn't want to go on kind of a quest style book. I don't know why I really wasn't invested with this. I think that a lot of people really will love this book because it was originally independently published and now it is being traditionally published. So it is already out and a lot of people have read it and absolutely loved it. Again, it just missed the mark. I then finally read the 70-page book of Cleaner of Bones by Meg Castle. Listen, you guys, I know that this was in a previous vlog, so I'm not going to go over a whole lot of that. It was my weekend vlog, I believe, so if you want to go back and watch that if you want more in-depth thoughts. I ended up giving this 4 stars. I love it. I wish that there was more books in this series. This is supposed to be a prequel before Blackbird of the Gallows. Highly suggest reading it before you get into the series. I know that I originally said in that video to read it before book 1 and book 2, but I really think reading this before book 1 will really kind of wrap a whole lot of things up for you. I loved it, and if you want more thoughts on it, definitely go back and watch my weekend reading vlog that I posted earlier this month. And then also that was included in that video was A Touch of Shadows by Jessica Thorne. I keep forgetting her name. I had an audio arc of this book and I'm going to tell you right now, it blew me away. I can't wait until the next book in this series comes out. You are following our girl who basically has been living in the woods where a lot of these creatures live and people go in but never come out, and you don't know really kind of her background or where she came from, but she is friends with the crown prince or someone that is high up in that area, and he ends up being in the woods with her. She saves his life. They're kind of going on this quest because she thinks that she needs to go meet her mother at this one area, and there's just a mystery aspect. Another person comes into play from a neighboring kingdom. Things really start to ramp up and the whole story just expands from there. The world expands. Definitely check trigger warnings before you go into it, but if you like these hollow vows, if you like a fantasy romance kind of in the same vein of A Court of Thorns and Roses but not really, you're gonna love this book, and I highly suggest picking it up. I then finally finished my arc of Dirty Lying Wolves by Sabrina Blackberry. This was a struggle for me. It took me all of August basically to get through this book because I just don't really like wolf shifter romances. It's nothing against them. I'm just, something about the wolves. I don't get it, possibly, but basically this is the third book in the Enchanted Fates series where our girl is caught up in this world of wolf shapeshifters, and she ends up getting bitten, so now she's going to end up shifting. She goes to their remote village, and there is a mystery aspect to it. There are things that are at play, dark forces that are at play. They're all trying to figure things out. Characters from the previous two books in this series really come into play in this book, and the way that it ended, I feel like Sabrina Blackberry is done writing in this world, but on Wattpad she has one about sirens, so I don't know if there's going to be more or not. The overarching plot is amazing. I love whenever characters from previous books come into play, but basically our girl's trying to survive in this wolf shifting climate that she's never known about. She is trying to make sure that she doesn't die whenever the full moon comes out. She's trying to unravel a mystery and why there is these rogue wolves coming to attack this village. It was really good. Once I finally got over the whole wolf shifter thing and about 60% in, it kind of just flew at that point. I'm happy I read it, and if this is the last book in the series, I am very happy I read it. But again, for me personally, I'm not a wolf shifter romance girly, so if you are, you probably would end up loving this book. Next that I ended up listening to was an audio arc of Immortal Dark by Tyjas Germa. Let me tell you guys something. Run, do not walk to your local bookstore when this thing releases because it is amazing. It is beautiful. There is so many things about this book that I absolutely loved. It has a dark academia type setting, but not necessarily dark academia. Vampires. It has kind of like an arcane secret society. So many gothic elements to this book. The perfect book to consume in October. Absolutely. And it is pitched for people who like The Cruel Prince meets Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. Listen, I've never read Ninth House. Now I want to, because if this book takes any elements from that series, I'm gonna love it. You are following our girl who basically is forced to live with a vampire who, in all intents and purposes, has killed her entire family and now is trying to take the house that her family has had for generations for himself. So she is living in this house. She doesn't trust him. She believes that he stole her sister and killed her. So now she is on a vengeance and a vindictive quest where she is going to bring this vampire down. You are following both of them. You are following kind of like this whole mystery aspect on this dark academia setting where our girl is trying to uncover things about the secret society, and basically everything that she knows is not what is real. You guys, it is so good. So good. I ended up giving this 5 stars. 5-star read. The audiobook as well is absolutely beautiful. So if you don't want to physically read, but you want to read it on audio, hands down, one of the best audiobooks that there are. And then the last book that I ended up reading for August was Lady of Shadows by Melissa K. Rourke, which is book 2 in the Lady of Darkness series. I can't tell you much about this book because it would give away spoilers, but basically you are following Talon, Scarlet, Soren, the whole cast of characters as this whole world expands. The mystery plot gets more intricate. You are trying to figure out what is happening, who's behind things, and it just gets wild. So like I said, whenever I was talking about Lady of Darkness, if you love dark fantasy romances, you are really gonna love this series. I feel like the first book, whole lot of world building where you are trying to get your toes wet, but by the end of the book, you have that plot twist that happens that makes you immediately want to go into book 2. So I probably will continue the series throughout the month of September because I do want to get through it so I can start reading the Legacy series, because book 3 in the Legacy series is coming out in October. I'm loving every aspect of Melissa K. Rourke's writing, her world building, her character. I can't wait to see what books 3, 4, and 5 have in store for me. All right, you guys, those are all the books that I read in August. Let me know down below, are there any books that you gave 5 stars to in August? Let me know which ones they are, or have you read any of the books that are on my wrap up video? And then also, if you don't want to leave a comment, you can always just let me know that you were here by leaving a fire emoji down below. And I will see you guys next time. Hopefully I am much better. I'm not as congested. You know, I'm just having a hard time right now. I am over COVID at this point, but the congestion, the coughing, the fatigue of my whole body is still here. So I think it's going to take me another week to get better, but at least I'm able to sit down and film a video since I wasn't able to put one out last Saturday. But I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time. Bye!